In this lesson, we're going to introduce the Content Center. The Content Center consists of standard features and parts that we can utilize to help create our parts and assemblies much faster. To start off with here, I'm going to actually take a look at a project file that we're utilizing for these computer-based training modules. I'm going to go under the File pull-down and click on Projects. So you see the project that I have current is our computer-based training project. And what I'm going to do is come down here and I'm going to click on Configure Content Center Libraries. When Inventor is installed, it installs all of the libraries, which you can see in the dialog box here, has ANSI, DIN, ISO, GIS, and so forth. Now, if you're not going to utilize all of these libraries, what we suggest is to go back and delete them from this project. So you're not deleting them necessarily from the hard drive. The content will not show up when we go back and start to specify that specific feature or part, which will, in this case, increase the speed at which you go back and place these components. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the DIN and the GIS. And let's say, for example, I also want to delete the ISO. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. But maybe let's say at this point you're working and you realize maybe I really do need that ISO component. Not a big deal. Just go back again to the Configure button. And what we'll do now is go back and then click on Add Library. Then from the list, in this case, I'm going to go down and select ISO. Go ahead, click OK. And OK. And now we're all set to start to add our components. So let's go back and I'm going to save our project file. Click Done. Next, let's go back and take a look at how we utilize the Content Center while working with a part. So I'm going to start up a new part file. And I'm just going to draw in a rectangle. Let's give that rectangle some dimensions. So we'll call it 100 by 50. And let's go ahead and we'll extrude that out. So now what we can do is we can use the Content Center to help us place features. So what I'm going to do from the Part Features panel, we're going to scroll on down and we're looking for the tool called Place Feature. After the libraries load, the Place Feature from Content Center dialog box will appear. And think of this as walking through a wizard. So what we're going to do is basically answer a set of questions. So in this case, I want to place an English or a metric. I will work with a metric file in this case. Now, what type of feature do I want to place? So in this case, let's go down and place in a slot. Very common feature. And in this case, do we want to do a join or a slot hole? So let's go down and in this case, select slot hole. Then how big? Let's change the depth to 5, the width to 20, and let's change the length to 50. Go ahead and click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a plane that I want to place that feature on. So now you'll notice I have the grip point, so if I wanted to I could go back and move this. But in this case I'm going to just do a right click Done, and everything will be centered. In the browser you'll see that I have a feature here called Slot Hole, and I do have the sketch. So if I go back and I want to modify its location, in this case it is centered, but if I do want to modify it, I'm just going to make the sketch active. And if I come back in here and just try to drag it, you'll notice that I cannot do that. So we have constraints that are holding down the sketch. So I'm going to right click and I want to show all my constraints. And I have a couple of fixed constraints that I want to delete. So I'm going to delete the one on each line here. That's holding it down. So now if I come back and place in a dimension, I'm just going to do D from the keyboard. I can go back and let's, in this case, specify it at 12. You'll see that the feature moves. So we can continue to go back and modify dimensions as needed. So as I just zoom back here a little bit, you'll notice that each dimension here has been placed with D values to set up relationships, but feel free to go back and modify those as needed. So let's do an update. and our slot has been changed to reflect our new location. If you right click on the feature itself, edit feature, you'll also see that the depth here, in this case it's defaulted to DD0 to let us know that the DD that it was placed from the content center. But of course, like I said, you can override that, so if I go back and change that to all, the slot will now go all the way through. So next, what I'd like to point out is that we can go back and publish features to a library as well. But before you go back and publish a feature, what you do need to do from the Autodesk Data Management Server console, you need to go back and add a library that you can go back and place content into. The default libraries are read-only and you will not be able to publish your content. But once you do have your content ready to be published, the first thing what I'll do in this case is I'm going to save the file. I'll just keep the default. So to publish out a feature, once our file has been saved, go ahead and click under the Tools pull down, Publish Feature. And then from the Publish Feature, basically it's going to walk us through. So let's say I wanted to publish back out the slot. Go ahead, click Next. And then from this point, we're going to go back and you're going to specify what values or parameters we want the user to be able to change. And then if you go ahead and click on Next, it'll start to publish out that data. But I didn't create a library for it to be placed. So if I did click on Next, a dialog box is going to pop up as shown here, stating that I need to go back and create a right library. So I'm going to close out of this file. And let's open up an assembly file. From the Chapter 9 exercise folder, I'm going to open up the designviews.iam folder and we'll update the changes. So what I want to do next is place in some content from the Content Center. So from the assembly panel, go ahead and click on Place from Content Center. And now our information is going to change here a little bit. You'll see that it's defaulting to the features, so that would be an assembly feature. That's not what I want. But you will see that we have a lot of different options. We have fasteners, under the other parts, drill bushings, O-rings, different shaft parts, the steel shapes, and tube and pipe. The tube and pipe, this library is going to be available to everybody, even if you do not have Inventor Professional installed. So let's go back up here and let's just place in a fastener. So I'll expand fastener. And if you go ahead and you click on any one of these, we can get an image. So for our example here, let's go back and place in a socket head. And right now I'm seeing ISO bolts. If I want to place in an ANSI bolt, I can go back under the filter and go back and let's specify ANSI. As you can see, now I'm only seeing the ANSI bolts. So we'll go ahead and we'll just select the drilled. So right now I have the auto drop turned on. So what that's going to do here is I zoom back up on this hole. I'm going to move my cursor over the hole. Inventor is going to take a look at that information and it's going to try to resize it for me. So in this case it's making a recommendation. If I don't like that, I can right mouse click and I could edit the component size. But in this case, if that is what I want, I'm just going to go ahead and click on Done. And the bolt will be placed. So let's go back and take a look at it in the browser. So you'll notice I have my drilled socket head. If I try to move that, you'll see that it is constrained for me. So let's go back and expand the browser here a little bit so we can see it. So you'll notice that we have that insert constraint already applied. So what I can do is I have a couple different ways of editing the content. So what I can do is I can change its size or replace it. So if I go back and change size, from the dialog box I can simply select a different size. If I did have a pattern component, I could also do a replace all, or if I had that bolt in there multiple times, it would replace them all. In this case I just have one, so just go ahead and click OK. And our bolt was replaced with a longer size. So let's try that again. I'm going to replace from the Content Center. So let's change this to an ISO bolt. So I'm going to change my filter back to ISO. And let's change it to the 4762. So from the list, I'm going to go ahead and select on the 3mm and the M2. Go ahead and click OK. So now I'm getting a dialog box noting that the IMATE information, the assembly constraint, is going to try to get replaced. So in this case, you see it again when it may be a little bit small. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and delete that bolt. What I want to show next is going to be the auto drop. So again, if I go back and say place from the content center, I have the auto drop option right here. So when the button is pushed in white, that's telling me that it is active. So if I uncheck that and go ahead and place in the ISO, it never allowed me to move the cursor over the hole and have it automatic resize. So what I would need to do in this case is physically select the exact size of the bolt that I want. So let's back off. Then I would have to place in that bolt. So we'll have to apply an assembly constraint. So I'll just hit C on the keyboard. We'll do an insert constraint to the center of that, to the center of that, and apply that.